Hello, everybody. I hope you had a good lunch. And since we'd like everybody to get to know each other a little bit better, let's start with some rounds of introductions. So if we can start maybe from this table, so each of you, one at a time, just introduce yourselves, where you come from, what's your name, and which organization you represent. So we start with this ice-breaking session.
Read your mind, so please pass the mic. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fairuz from Malaysia, from Ministry of Digital Malaysia. Thank you.
Good afternoon. For those of you that's here this morning, you might remember me. I was in a panel. Frank Dabbits. I lead the Customs and International Trade Consulting practice at PwC in Singapore with responsibility for the APAC region.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. I also was on the panel this morning, but everyone can just call me Liz. At the moment, I'm actually triple hatting. I'm from MTI, SBF, and recently appointed a Senior Adjunct Fellow for RSIS Center for Multilateralism Studies. It's all moving forward because I will be leaving the civil service at the end of this year after 30 years. So yeah, so I know a lot, so you can ask a lot of questions, so we can have a good engagement.
Good afternoon. I'm Raymond. Going to be on the next panel. I cover all the customs and regulatory affairs for DHL Express, Asia Pacific, excluding China.
Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn from DHL Express, and I cover all the global customers in the Asia Pacific region.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Me Ade work in Ministry of Trade Indonesia, and I'm working with Director Lan as a alternate sales lead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Alwel Mulsid. I'm from the Department of Information and Communication Technology, Philippines. I'm from a specific bureau, Cybersecurity Bureau.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gloria Ting from the Philippines under the Department of Trade and Industry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Myrtle, and similar with Gloria, I'm also from the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
It's on.
Hi, I'm Sin Lu from Ministry of Trade and Industry, Singapore. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Evie Andrianto. You can call me Andre. I'm from the ASEAN Secretariat, Trade Facilitation Division, covering for ASEAN Customs Transit System. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aji. Same with Andy from Secretariat. My review is on ASEAN Customs Transit System, which I believe I'm going to speak after this. So, good to see you all.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marisa. I'm from the International Trade Center, and we're implementing the Scope Trade project. And we intend to work very closely with eReady over the next few months. But very nice to meet everybody. Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon, all. Safwan from the ASEAN Connectivity Division of the ASEAN Secretariat. I was just at the panel this morning before lunch.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fadli Yuliansyah. I'm from the Ministry of Communications and Digital Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Nainggolan. I am from Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs Indonesia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you. I am Adi. I am also from the Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs in Indonesia, especially in Assistant Deputy for Digital Economy Development. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Liana. I am the non-key expert from eReady. I just want to say a personal thank you to all the speakers who showed up in full force. Thank you very much, and for all of you for staying. I really hope that we'll get good recommendations because it's all going to feed into hopefully the ASEAN Economic Ministers and EU Trade Councillors, Trade Commissioners meeting. So if you can be as interactive as possible, we'd really appreciate it. You make my life much, much easier. So thank you in advance.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jariya. I'm from Electronic Transaction Development Agency from Thailand, responsible for many aspects of digital transformation and transaction as well.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Sorry, my name is Usanisa Kuneganan. I'm from EDDA, Electronic Transaction Development Agency, under the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society. Nice to meet you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ponsini. I'm from Department of Trade Negotiations, Ministry of Commerce of Thailand. Nice to meet you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Natisha Tansakun from the Department of Trade Negotiation, Ministry of Commerce, Thailand.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Presti. I'm from ASEAN Secretariat and External Economic Relations Division.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruth Carlina. I'm from the ASEAN Secretariat, from the Analysis and Monitoring on Trade Industry Emerging Issues Division.
Good afternoon again. I'm Sunita Laku. I'm the head of the EIB, European Investment Bank, covering Southeast Asia and the Pacific, and I'm based in Jakarta.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zuhelmi Akmal. You can call me Zul. I'm from Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, overseeing the Digital Economy Division. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin. I'm from the EU ASEAN Business Council. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Soleh Irawan. I'm from the Digital Economy Division of the ASEAN Secretariat. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Khan. I'm from ASEAN Secretariat and External Economic Cooperation Relation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ritai Chinok Jingjit Pop. I'm from the Ministry of Commerce of Thailand. Currently, I'm in charge of the RCEP and ASEAN. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am from Myanmar, working at the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Economic Relations. I'm working at Siam office. Thank you.
A very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sanita. I'm from Ministry of Commerce, Cambodia, particularly under the General Department of International Trade. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Yes, we had a wonderful lunch together. My name is Ratana. I'm from Cambodia, Ministry of Commerce. And I would like to say thank you to eReady for organizing such an important workshop today. And also, allow me to express my sincere thanks to all speakers for sharing your wonderful insights. And I look forward to learning from all of you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nimat. I'm from Ministry of Commerce, Cambodia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ms. Win Papadu. I'm from Department of Trade, Ministry of Commerce, and I was the former economic counselor to Republic of Korea from 2019 to 2022, and now I work especially for the digital economy and e-commerce subject. Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you all.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suk Lê. I'm from the Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry.
Good afternoon, every morning. My name is Hoàng Nguyen. I'm from Ministry of Industry and Trade Vietnam.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ching. I'm from Department of International Cooperation, Ministry of Science and Technology of Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hieu Ngu from Ministry of Industry and Trade, Vietnam. I'm specifically from the Bilateral Trade Policy Department. Thank you.
Hello, Gustav Rierink. I'm a corporate lawyer from Jakarta, but I'm here in the capacity of legal secretary and executive board member of the EU ABC. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aluna from Department of Digital Technologies, belong to Ministry of Technology and Communications of Laos. Thank you for having me today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Savankham Pongsavat from Department of Negotiation and Cooperation, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Lao PDR.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dalibon Sengkamyong from Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Lao PDR. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jantavilai Saitilian from the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Lao PDR. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Mudd. I'm a digital trade economist and ICT standards expert with the ISO in Hong Kong. In a previous life, I worked for Standard Chartered Bank in trade facilitation, documentation. But I'm very happy now to work for myself. And thank you, MINA and EU, for inviting me here today.
So I think this one. Well, thank you very much. Now that we know each other a little bit better, we can start with the first roundtable discussion. Deep dive into physical and regulatory bottlenecks. And again, I'd like to invite Paolo to moderate, and Raymond Yee, Vice President for Customs and Regulatory Affairs from DHL, to present. And also I'd like to ask Mr. Aji Bhaskara, Senior Officer, Central Management Team of ASEAN Secretariat, to join us on the panel.
Yeah, you go first. Maybe we see the second.
Thank you, Mina. And good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch with renewed energy now to embark in our second part of the workshop. And there was a little hidden agenda in all of you introducing yourselves, and that was to try and loosen up a little bit the audience. We hope that you will now contribute with some thoughts, inputs, suggestions, questions, because otherwise it's going to be a lonely afternoon for us up here. Yeah? So please, let's make it really a dialogue this afternoon, and we look forward to hearing from all of you. But to set the stage for our discussion, I'm very happy to have here Raymond and Aji, who know inside out some of the instruments that ASEAN has equipped itself with to try and facilitate trade. They also know, of course, on their skin, I should say, the pains and sufferings of operators that have to navigate the sometimes complex requirements at customs in the region. And so I think, and I hope that they will set the stage for a good discussion on how improvements on the regulatory and customs end of things, not so much on the infrastructural one, but could help ASEAN and the EU partnering to bring about higher resilience to their supply chains, integrate their economies better, and continue the processes of respective regional economic integration. To do that, Ray will have a presentation with a lot of data and thoughts and ideas to stimulate the discussion. I will then engage in a rapid fire set of questions with Aji on the ACTS. Aji is in the central management team at the ASEAN Secretariat, managing the ACTS as it is. And you will hear also now studying at ways to expand both the geographic coverage of ACTS and also the tools and the procedures and the multimodal nature of ACTS, really trying to jumpstart a bit this tool, which, as we said earlier, has fantastic potential. I think we're still far from seeing it fully deploy that potential or harness that potential. But the discussions today, I hope, will bring about some light on these customs and trade facilitative tools, and perhaps also wonder where your questions and your inputs will take us. Without further ado, Ray, if you want to take us through your presentation, and then Aji will have a chat.
Yes, can you hear me? Yep. Okay, so just first of all, I'd like to thank the e-readiness project team and the Secretariat for inviting DHL. It's a bit of background. So maybe about 15 years ago, I used to be in the Secretariat. We were involved in the implementation of AFTA, as well as trade facilitation. When the ASEAN Agreement on Customs was signed, the AHTN was signed, and so on. And I've since moved into industry. So some of these things are just to highlight some of the challenges that DHL finds in running regional and global supply chains, particularly at the border. This is a unique perspective of how DHL particularly manages the movement of shipments. If you look at the bottom right, it starts with an order that is made by a shipper for us to pick up a shipment in Hanoi, right? So it goes into our Hanoi gateway where it is processed for export. And right after that, it is flown into our hub in Hong Kong at 11 midnight on the same day. Now, we operate a hub and spoke model because for logistics efficiency, right? And this will probably feature back into the ACTS. Why do we have a hub and spoke model? Because we want to maximize space in an aircraft or in any other transportation mode, right? So we also have hubs in Singapore and Bangkok, right, for ASEAN. Right after that, the shipment is uplifted or flown from Hong Kong because it's going to Europe. It goes into our hub in Leipzig, right? At 2 o'clock Central European time, it arrives for a sort in Leipzig before it is then flown to our Rome gateway, right? It arrives Rome at 7 o'clock Central European time the next day. It is processed for import clearance, and then by the time it moves into our service center and is delivered at 10:30 a.m. Central European time the next day. This is a very tight supply chain. It's time definite, it's speed, and there is a lot of processing that goes on in the middle of the night and in the early hours of the morning. So you will realize that global supply chains are pretty tight, and they're driven by the needs of manufacturing, the needs of customers to get closer and faster to market. All right? Now, what is the difference between an express shipment? So I come from an express part of logistics, and conventional air freight, as I mentioned, obviously we're faster. We have a faster transit time, right? We need faster clearance times. We are usually door to door. Whereas conventional air freight, and you will see this also in the ASEAN Customs Transit System, right? They break up parts of the supply chain, whereas we handle the end-to-end because of the need for speed. In most cases, we also handle the customs clearance, whereas in a normal logistics sense, they are outsourced that to a third-party customs broker, right, that does export and import clearance. Okay, so that's just typically the difference. But the main thing for any logistics and supply chain is speed, efficiency, or the ability to have time-definite deliveries, right? Now, this is a little bit of an idea of how our shipments move one way and the data for the shipments move a different way. So what is the data of the shipment? The invoice value, the description, the shipper, the consignee, these are all things that accompany the shipment, but they go at different times. So many times before we pick up a shipment, we already get the data for the shipment that we can start processing for export, and for import. And ideally, we like to submit to customs in advance of the shipment arrival, right? And the reason we do that is because we want to be able to process as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. So here you just find the different steps that we take when we submit data to customs in both the export and the import country, right? So now you've seen the movement of the physical movement of the goods and the movement of the data, okay? So how does this all impact efficient supply chains? Now, for a supply chain to be efficient, customs and other border and beyond the border procedures have a significant impact on the supply chain, and we call these bottlenecks, right? So if you need to process documentation to move a shipment, that's one, or if you have to hold a shipment, that then requires multiple handling, it requires storage, this increases supply chain costs. So if people talk about supply chain connectivity, it's not just about infrastructure, right? Someone talked about the soft aspects, the soft infrastructure, right? This is it. It's the bureaucratic aspect of either moving a shipment or having to handle it multiple times that adds costs into the supply chain, right? So these bottlenecks affect the efficiency and the connectivity in the supply chain. Now, how do we then handle these regulatory requirements? Either you streamline them, you eliminate them, or you impose them before or after the shipment moves. So give you an example, right? If I need to submit for customs clearance at a border, can I submit that before the shipment moves so that the shipment is already cleared by the time it arrives the country, as an example? Another one is MRAs. If I have an MRA on standards, does that mean that if I have gotten MRA standard certification from the export country, it is deemed to already be acceptable in the import country? I don't need to do additional steps during the shipment movement. So you're trying to make that movement as efficient as possible and reduce any bureaucratic requirements during its movement, right? This is in order to reduce any supply chain inefficiencies and costs. So here are some examples, and just bear with me, right? Because I looked at the panel, it was in 1.5 hours, and I thought, how detailed do I have to go into this? But these are some examples of bottlenecks that we've seen in some of the ASEAN countries. So I would like this Chatham House rules, I'm not going to single out any country, but these are some things we should have seen in some ASEAN countries, right? The first one, and maybe this applies to both trade and the digital economy, we do not have paperless customs. There is only one ASEAN country that has paperless customs. Everyone else has paperwork requirements, or even worse, a requirement to submit both manual and data electronically. That's double the handling. So remember I talked about multiple handling, right? This is double the handling, all right? Now, we also talk about low value clearances. ASEAN has there is a proposal put to ASEAN for low value shipments to have simplified clearance. And what do I mean by simplified clearance? Reduced data elements, ability to submit bulk clearance, clearance in bulk, and so on. Not every ASEAN country has that. And the reason why you have that is because it gives you scale economies. For a low value shipment, if it's simplified, it allows customs to clear much faster for all these low value shipments where the revenue obtained is not as much as a high value. Now, I also talk about the ability to submit data for custom processing before the arrival of the shipment. All ASEAN countries have notified to the WTO that they allow pre-arrival processing. However, in reality, not all of them allow that. Some allow that, not all. And this adds to delays as well as cost in the supply chain because the shipment needs to be arrived. Then only you can submit a declaration, and by that time it's too late, it takes too long, and there is then a massive backlog in customs, right? So no ability to submit pre-arrival. In some cases also, when we submit a manifest, so a manifest talks about the types of shipments in a transport mode, right? So a flight manifest, a ship manifest, and so on. Some countries require us to submit a tax ID inside that manifest, and for what reason, we have no idea. It doesn't add to the requirement for what's inside the shipment, right? But when you add additional data that then requires the shipment to be held and the shipper or the receiver to be called to get the tax ID, that takes time, that takes effort, and that adds cost, right? Now, some other ASEAN countries also now require this. There's a new rule out in this country that requires all overseas exporters to this country to register into ASEAN. So for example, if you were an ASEAN country imposing this, country Y, if an exporter exists in country X, you need that exporter to register into country Y's customs system. If you fail to do that, the importer gets fined. This is a massive non-tariff barrier. That regulation is out and is meant to be implemented in August. Then what about the ATIGA treatment? We have examples of customers who have invested in one ASEAN country in order to qualify for ATIGA, and only after shipment to another ASEAN country to realize that they were refused any preferential treatment. So what is the recourse for this country? They've invested money already into this, and they're not given any protection in terms of preferential treatment under ATIGA, right? Now, we also talk about national single window. Let's be honest here, not all national single windows are single. The windows are multiple. You have to submit multiple times in order to get your data cleared. That's one. Second thing is it doesn't cover all the other agencies, right? You know, you have FDA, you have health, you have agriculture, SPS, and so on, right? Not all of the single windows cover the different agencies. We also have seen incidences of customs official charges now increasing in the region. And these, to me, add as additional tax, right? Now, under ATIGA, I know, especially under AFTA, I know we talked about customs surcharges as being exempt. However, we are not seeing this. This is going the opposite way, where there are additional charges. Some ASEAN countries have also begun to impose VAT on the de minimis shipments. De minimis are shipments that are duty and tax-free. However, these now are being imposed at the border. So if you import something for $1 and you have to pay a 10% GST on it, that's 10 cents. You have to collect that 10 cents. The cost of collecting that is much higher than the revenue that you actually receive. Is that efficient? We also see X-ray requirements now on import. And the X-ray requirements are not just one agency. We are seeing civil aviation, other types of maritime authorities. We are seeing other security agencies requiring X-rays. So there are multi-layered requirements for X-rays, different agencies not coordinated. That adds additional costs and delays, right? We're also seeing now this disproportionate enforcement of penalty. For example, as a broker, there's only so much we can do to ensure that we demonstrate a duty of care to comply with customs rules. However, if an importer cannot be sought after by the customs authorities, they start penalizing the broker disproportionately and unfairly. This creates uncertainty, this creates a lot of unpredictability, and the costs eventually get passed on to the importer, right? And similar to that, there's very little distinction between intended and unintended errors at customs. If you made a mistake, right, nowadays brokers are afraid they will lose their license just because of a mistake. That creates also additional uncertainty. We also find that anytime there are new regulations being issued in ASEAN, I'm not talking about the ASEAN level, I'm talking about at the ASEAN country level, there is lack of meaningful engagement. Industry does provide a lot of feedback. The EU ASEAN Business Council provides a lot of feedback. However, not a lot of that is taken into account, and when it gets implemented, we don't have sufficient grace period for implementation. So from an industry perspective, this creates, again, uncertainty in the supply chain, right? I also talk about the high level of inspections at the border. Customs do not use enough of the data that we send them in order to do risk profiling to reduce the number of physical inspections, right? Because that's ideally what you want to do. We call this layered risk management. You first look at the data. If something looks suspicious, then only you look at the physical inspection, right? So we call this layered risk management. We also see differing treatments at different ports of entry into ASEAN. That causes also confusion amongst industry and in the supply chain, right? we talked about e-commerce now, right? We are seeing also additional requirements to clear e-commerce shipments in a number of ASEAN countries. Some of the ASEAN countries have issued regulations on e-commerce only to realize that it can't be implemented. So these are regulations that are sitting there as white elephants but not being used. And that causes uncertainty because for industry, if we want to comply, we don't even know what are we complying to. Then we also talk about the need, if there are concerns by customs in terms of abuse of the, for example, intellectual property rights of undervalued shipments, we ask customs to take a risk-based approach. Look at your compliant and your non-compliant players and traders, right? And enforce that accordingly. At the moment, there is no such distinction or insufficient distinction between compliant and non-compliant traders. So in other words, if there is one non-compliant trader, everyone gets affected by more restrictive regulations, right? Again, taking a risk-based approach. We asked also that for ASEAN, when they're looking at streamlining, can there be regular reviews to find ways to streamline the customs clearance procedures? There's duplicate, multiple handling, multiple requirements for paperwork, and so on and so forth, right? Then we also talk about partnership with industry. Can ASEAN customs partner with the more compliant players in the industry? So you can then focus on the more high-risk players, right? Focus your resources accordingly. ASEAN has what we call good regulatory practices. Under the good regulatory practice guidelines, it requires them to make regulatory impact assessments. How often has that been done on the key regulations in ASEAN? Because there are, as I mentioned, the e-commerce regulation is one example. You've issued a regulation. What has been that impact? It has not been enforced in some countries because it was, in my view, that it could have been better designed as a regulation, right? So this is another thing for us as an industry. It's there sitting as a guideline within ASEAN, but we don't see any action that's being done on some of these more punitive regulations and restrictions at the border. And then finally, I only added all this because it makes a nice jigsaw puzzle, a square jigsaw puzzle. And the final one for me was we see a lot of customs valuation increases at the border because customs suspects shipments are undervalued. Of course, customs has the right to do that. But to assume that everything has to be undervalued, everything needs to be uplifted in terms of its value and revalued, that causes a lot of uncertainty also especially when shippers have to price in the duty amounts, right, when they're setting prices with their customers. Now, all of this are not addressed through ASEAN programs. These are regulations which countries have issued domestically that impacts what happens at the border. So if one person were to ask, so what is ASEAN doing regionally? ASEAN is at 20,000 feet. But then you have this at 5,000, at 1,000 at ground level, at really the front line, right? How can this be managed at the ASEAN level? Because this is what matters on the ground. This is where the rubber hits the road. And this is what are the challenges we're facing as an industry who are facing this in the front line day in, day out. So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray. That was really good. I think it provided us with a good degree of granularity on the type of issues. I must say that when I was reading a number of them, I thought to myself that these are properly provided for already in the WTO agreement, in the trade facilitation agreement, in the ASEAN guidelines, in the ASEAN trade facilitation framework. So it's not that the rules are not there. The problem, I think, is in the implementation. And so I think we're going to have to come back to that because it is probably there where there needs to be more work between the likes of EU and ASEAN itself, but really to address some of them are, of course, complex, and some of them are being adopted now by countries left and right around the world. So it's not just an ASEAN phenomenon. Let's also be honest about that. Unfortunately, protectionism, economic nationalism is on the rise, and a lot of those things, I think, perhaps have been copied by ASEAN, but are happening elsewhere. But I think the tools are there to address them, and perhaps it's just a matter of how can they work their way up to the leaders. So I think that sometimes the leaders are not really aware of what's going on. They live in a bubble, right? They have all these fantastic ASEAN tools and agreements which are agreed, but then there's a bit of a problem with the actual implementation of them. Now, perhaps before we start having a bit more of a discussion and perhaps zooming back to some of those specific issues, let us look at one tool that ASEAN has adopted. Incidentally, in cooperation, that was a great example of cooperation with the EU to try and address the phenomenon of the aggravation that traders endure when they have to move a good from one ASEAN member state to another through one or more other ASEAN member states. The issue of transit, which still at the moment, for the most part, is causing a lot of problems. If we had to go back to your little diagram there and imagining it happening only in ASEAN, I think we would have different time frames probably. But so the issue of transit is important, very much so for some ASEAN member states, right? I'm thinking of Laos PDR, landlocked. You need to go through other ASEAN member states if you want to get to a port, unless you're flying the product. So transit is really important. It is provided at global level within the WTO. There are rules in the GATT. It is provided, of course, in the ATIGA and in some of the agreements of ASEAN, AFAFGIT, AFAFIST. But then it was conceptualized, operationalized in the ACTS, the ASEAN Customs Transit System. And Aji, you are at the epicenter of that in a way, because you are in the central management unit and you're trying to already service that mechanism for the ASEAN member states that are already utilizing it, but also you're looking into ways to extend its coverage and its geographical application. Why don't you, first of all, Aji, if you can tell us in simple terms what ACTS is and how it works, because I imagine that some of us around the room may not have heard of it or may not be very familiar with it. So give us a quick run through to the system.
Thanks, Paulo. So thank you for setting up the tone for me to explain about the ACTS quickly. So the ACTS is computerized customs transit management systems that streamlines customs procedures for goods in transit across ASEAN by allowing the traders to use a single digital customs transit declarations valid for the entire journey across participating member states. So as you mentioned, if the goods are crossing past one or two or three countries in transit, it's valid for the entire journey, which in the end, this reduces the need for multiple declarations, minimize physical inspections, eliminates duplicate submissions or multiple guarantees, and shortens clearance times at border crossings. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, so to give you a picture, basically, imagine a good coming through the port in Singapore, but having to go to Thailand. That good in a customs transit system like the one that Aji is going to elaborate would go through Malaysia without having to do the customs clearance out of Singapore into Malaysia and then out of Malaysia into Thailand, but it would go seamlessly, right, in transit with a facilitated customs procedure, which is computerized and now being managed by the authorities of those three countries, Singapore, Malaysia as the transit country, and Thailand in one go. Right now, there are some problems, and perhaps we get to it, because I understand that at the moment, the container that is offloaded the boat in Singapore would have to be taken off a truck and onto another truck into Malaysia and get new drivers, and then the same with Thailand. So it's still an imperfect system, but the principle is clear, right? It's an expedited, simplified customs procedure that skips some of the steps and therefore gains time and I guess money, right? It reduces the costs.
Yeah, so basically with these features, goods can move faster across the countries,
Yeah.
which in the end, it helps lower the cost of the trade. And the principal traders, the one who's moving the goods, can offer a lower and cheaper options to their customers, which in the end help increasing the trade itself.
Yeah. So the primary, I think, benefits are faster movements.
Yeah, and
lower
costs. Yeah, which in the end, the principal traders.
Lower complexities also, because you don't have to do all these customs declarations in and out, right? And you do it only once at the beginning, once at the end. Is that correct?
So basically, you just need to declare it one time, and it's valid for across all the journey, which is minimize all the problems that you have at each border if you intend to do the movement across the countries.
And currently, it's only operationalized in continental ASEAN, right? The Philippines, Indonesia,
Yes,
which
not
are not
yet, yeah.
connected through land, are not yet part of the system. So is Borneo and Brunei and the Malaysian and Indonesian parts of it. But that is happening, right? That's going to happen. There is going to be an extension to multimodal and
Yes.
also to more ASEAN member states.
Yes,
Is that
that's
correct?
true. So basically, since it's launched in November 2020, SETS has already have around 653 successful cross-border movements across the 7 participating member states: Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And we are also planning to extend to Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines to have all the coverage into the region.
Mm. So you mentioned how many movements?
653.
Okay, roughly how many movements would there be in a given year in ASEAN?
So
I'm trying to understand that in the scale of trade.
So basically,
percentage points.
There is a growing pool of the registered traders.
Okay.
Basically, however, the usage is concentrated among a few. So during our launch in November 2020, it was in COVID. The whole year we only have 2 movements a year.
Yeah.
And then 2021 also 2 movements a year, very, very low. But then in 2022, we get the tractions, and for the total we have 63 for all the years. And then 2023 we had 98 movements, and last year was the largest. We did have 391, so it's like boost up like more 1,000%.
And how many different operators are registered and able to conduct this?
Yeah, I mean,
operations?
for the 7 participating member states, we had 67 registered.
Okay.
But actually, the one who actually actively do the movements is only 5.
Okay.
But now this year is only 1.
So let me play devil's advocate. Why is this not happening at a larger scale? If it would seem to be a no-brainer, right? It's a fantastic tool. It lowers costs. It lowers complexities. It reduces the time. What is missing? Where are the problems? If you can, as much as you can speak frankly about some of the bottlenecks or still the wrinkles that we need to iron out to make this a reality.
Yeah, so before we go there, I think I also want to introduce the experience that one of our traders used.
Mm-hmm.
So before the SETS, for movement from country A to country B to country C, it took around 5 to 7 days. But with SETS, it goes to 3 to 4 days in average. That's one. And then with regards of the cost saving itself, they reported around $200, more than $200 per container that they can save operationally. And then basically, and then at the border crossing itself, if they are using the national transit, we say, the waiting time is from 7 to 12 hours, but with SETS, it reduced to 3.5 until 5 hours only because of the green lane treatment if you are using the SETS. So those are the benefits that have been reported to us, where they're happy with the SETS. Now, back again with that, that hiccups on why the usage is still low. So one is the limited familiarity or at the border offices, for example. The I mean, the queries from the potential traders are usually asking the customs who was nearby with them, at the branches, or at the border points. But then sometimes those officials are not aware of ICTS. That's one. And then they only know what ICTS when they queries them at the headquarters. So that's one issue because of the frequent rotations at the border offices. That was reported to us. Then inconsistencies of the ICTS implementations across the member states. So we understand that ICTS have multiple stakeholders involved, not only customs, but also the one who provided the bank guarantee, the guarantee itself, and then the Department of Land Transport, because those are the one who issues the truck registrations process. That's one. And then if we go through to the bank itself, some reported to us that it's another problem because it's considered expensive, although we recommended that for the cost of obtaining the guarantee to be as much low as possible, but because of this driven by the business on how the banks can for the cost itself. And one of the reason is, let's say you want to start the movement from country A, B, C, and D, you have to obtain the guarantee from each countries. So we don't have like what we call the one guarantee for all, but you need to be specifically tied up to the country of departure itself. That's what makes hard for companies to join if they want to do the multiple movements from each countries.
Perhaps, Ajay, if I may, just for the benefit of the people in the room, maybe you explain a bit better the idea of the bank guarantees. Why are bank guarantees needed when the goods are moved through one or multiple transit countries?
Yeah, so basically the guarantees is needed. For example, when you go to country A, to country B, to country C, the guarantee is needed if anything happens in the country C. So let's say the trucks have problems and then the goods is lost, then the guarantee is there to cover those charges. But usually it doesn't happen if there is no problem at the country of transit. And imagine if you do the multiple countries and multiple guarantees, you have to apply for guarantees at each border crossings, which is, that's what the ICTS wants to tackle. We only use one guarantee applied for all, but then the problem with the guarantee in ICTS is when you start the movement from multiple countries, the guarantees is tied up to the country of departure.
Yeah. So perhaps give us just a glimpse before we open up a discussion on where ICTS is going now. So you mentioned, of course, that some member states are not yet part of it. Is there a plan to extend it to all 10 other member states? And also, how are you going to roll it out to more modes of transportation other than just road and land? Because at the moment that's only land, right, which is covered. It's trucking, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you going to roll it out also for railway, waterways, shipping, and air freight?
Yeah, so basically the ICTS limitations is that it covers only road transport in ASEAN. But once we expand to multimodal, covering not only trucks, but also rail, sea, and air, it naturally opens the door to wider connectivity. As you said, that goods don't just move using trucks in ASEAN, but they move beyond. And multimodal ICTS could eventually allow smoother links with others. That's why a feasibility study on this kind of connectivity will be important. And currently we are being supported by the EU through Scope Trade, and how that we can do covering for all member states, Brunei, the domestic member state, which is the Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So with regards of on the multimodals, expanding ICTS to multimodal is not just technical issues, but also legal. And SCTS is built on the FAFGIT framework, particularly on Protocol 7, which governs how SCTS operates and currently limits it to the road vehicles. So one of the key study is how to amend or supplement that Protocol 7 to cover the multimodal. Although it's not enough, we also need to add a protocol, which is Protocol 2 on the frontier post, since it's only decide land crossings, not ports or airports. And Protocol 6 on railways would also need to be checked as well. So basically, the feasibility study must go in hand with legal framework studies, and here I think the partners such EU can really support us by sharing us their experience in integrating road, rail, and sea under a system, customs transit system.
Yeah, well, one very last thing, going back to the question by Director Lam this morning, is there any technological solution that is available out there and that could fast-track adoption of ACTS and a wider platform of users in your mind? Is there anything that perhaps should be suggested for purposes of capacity building, technical assistance, joint public-private partnerships to make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, what we really need as of now is first the targeted awareness campaigns, because we need to strengthen the awareness. Many companies still don't know what is the SCTS and how it can save them for time and money. And also, regional campaigns can highlight success stories through Chamber of Commerce, and logistic associations can directly engage those traders as well. And since not only in regional, but we also need for national level outreach, because a country can tailor the message to its own business community. Next, I think we also need the capacity building and help desk support, because not only outside, but we need to reinforce our inside, and especially the customs official, the transport officials, they need regular refresher trainings to procedures are applied consistently. And SCTS is also a technical system, so countries must have strong help desk support, and not just headquarters, but accessible to the traders at the borders. And a reliable help desk can prevent such disruptions and build the user confidence and ensure the system works day to day. And also, I want to highlight what Director Lan mentioned about the system upgrade itself. The system itself must keep evolving, because SCTS is a complex software, and users expect it to be reliable, fast, and user-friendly. So regular upgrades are needed to fix the bugs, improve the stability, and add new features. Without continuous improvements on the IT side, traders will lose confidence of using the SCTS. That's from the system's perspective-wise. But also I want to address what Mr. Raymond said earlier. We also need the country-specific diagnostics and recommendations, because we need to recognize that challenges differ from one country to another countries. Some may face low trader awareness, others may struggle with the IT readiness and guarantee issuance, and country-specific diagnostic can help identify the gaps are, and we can provide tailored recommendations rather than one-size-fits-all approach. Yep, that's for me.
Thank you, Haji. Perhaps I turn back to Ray to get a bit of a reality check from a company like yours, which is moving goods and items across the world, but also in the ASEAN region. How do you see the ACTS, and where would you point at some of the critical elements that will need tweaking to really make it something that you're saying, yes, we have to use it, and it makes business sense to use it?
So the most important thing from a logistics perspective is when you have a truck, it cannot be half full when you are transporting it, because as we always say, right, if you transport air, you're not going to make money from air, right? If the truck is half empty, it's not going to be profitable. You would, in order to make the logistics supply chain as efficient and cost-effective as possible, you need to maximize the capacity of that truck. Now, if you can't, what you do is you have feeder trucks. So you go around collecting from different points so that you can fill the truck up, right? Now, if you can't, then what you want is to be able to fill the truck up as it moves along that movement. The problem with the ACTS is it's just point-to-point, minimum 3 countries, right? That is a massive restriction on the flexibility that is required when you are setting up a logistics operations, right? And that immediately takes away the viability of doing it unless you have a customer with sufficient volumes at a point where that's relevant for them. The other challenge with the ACTS is there are very designated transit points. The departure, the transit, and then the final destination. What happens if the customer is far away from that? Or you have customs brokers processing and customs officials processing it within a different facility, because you have free trade zones in different parts of mainland Southeast Asia, right? And they're all not near the transit points or the customs designated points, right? So that movement is going to cost additional money and time. So that's not going to be effective either. So maybe it comes back to this whole discussion about, GPS positioning for the truck, geocodes, coordinates to monitor the truck movement. Even what we do, we have also talked about e-locks within the truck, right? Electronic locks that customs is able to unlock, or only designated people with users and passwords is able to unlock, so that there's enough certainty for the truck and flexibility for them to move wherever they want to go, to enhance the efficiency, to pick up, and then as well as to drop off along the way without having to deal with all the other the types of restrictions. Now, the other thing with the bank guarantee, and this comes from my colleagues in freight forwarding, they say it is costly to get a regional bank guarantee, right? That's one. The other thing is they need to send the guarantee in advance before the truck moves. So that's the other restriction, right? Can't that already be in some repository within the ACTS system, right, that customs can get access to? So these are just some examples of how to make it more viable, because logistics requires flexibility, it requires customized solutions depending on the customer setup, right, in order to fill the truck up and then in order for it to be viable.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. And perhaps before I give it back to you, Aji, but here we go back to what Director Lam was saying, the technological solutions. There may be technological solutions to address some of these issues. Also, and this is very important for the work we are doing today, how confident are you, Ray, that the problems and also the solutions that you've just indicated are finding their way up to the leaders? Because so long as we keep moaning about things between ourselves and then we walk out of the door today and nothing happens, that's not good enough. But if we are able to start identifying some of the problems or shortcomings, some of the solutions, then I think it is for us to use the existing instruments, platforms, channels, or if they don't exist, perhaps we need to work on creating them for these inputs to go up to the decision makers. Because otherwise we keep trying to make something work, which is not going to work because on the market you don't have customers, right? So I think it is for us really, and this is part, I guess, of e-Radies, of the dialogue that we are trying to trigger, to find ways to send these inputs, send these ideas and solutions to the decision makers, wherever they are. And this is primarily an ASEAN thing. Now, if I look really down the road, I think I would love one day to have a system which is ACTS between the EU and ASEAN. Yeah, so that someone puts something on a truck in Malaysia and it goes through Singapore, but it has a destination in Amsterdam or in Rome, and that paperwork is super facilitated on a huge transit route. But I think we are miles away from that. Let's just now, in this instance, stick to ASEAN. I think we got to find a way for these inputs to work their way up. Of course, we have the likes of Director Lan, and I'm sure he'll walk away with inspiration today, but also there needs to be a bit more of an institutionalized way for business to transmit their inputs to the decision makers. And I don't know, Ray, if you have any food for thought on that, or maybe
So
we go to
maybe
Raj.
just on reflection, right? When I was in the Secretariat, we would create documents and plans of action and agreements, but with very little industry input. And now going on the other side, I realized how little of industry we understood. And so to me, this comes back down. If you talk about, in DHL, we talk about root cause, right? You don't find a solution unless you understand the root cause. Yeah. The root cause is the original initial regulatory design that never had the proper data set before you design something, right? You don't design something in a vacuum, but that I think is the challenge. The issue here is ASEAN ready to co-create regulations with industry? We call regulatory sandboxes, right? Instead of giving to industry almost cooked regulation and say, can you comment on it? And industry only is able to comment on this word, this paragraph. But the whole design of the regulation was never with industry input. So this is multiple examples in ASEAN where it's been created by some assumption of how the world works in reality, but in reality it doesn't work that way. And so the regulation, and I come back to this idea of regulatory impact assessment, you make an assessment of the impact of the regulation. Has it been successful? Did it meet its objectives? In industry, I can say this, we have KPIs. Have you met those KPIs for that regulation? If you haven't, obviously there's something wrong with the way it was designed. In the first place, what do you need to tweak, right? And this is what we call continuous improvement, right? You have Six Sigma ideas of all that, right? This is continuous improvement. How do you tweak that, right? To me, that whole mindset needs to be in there somehow, because this idea of going back up to the leaders, but you can't keep going to your bosses for every single micro detail. Sure. That's also the other challenge. They're going to be overwhelmed with too much information, right? And some of these are quite technical, right? Yeah. So that's the challenge. It comes back to, are we ready to co-create things to do a regulatory sandbox with industry?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ray. I think this is a good time to perhaps start hearing from you. First of all, I would say how many, and I see that Aldo De La Richa, the team leader of eReady, wants to intervene, but how many of you were familiar with ACTS in your respective walks of life? And I promise I will not ask you to speak if you lift your hand, but how many of you are familiar, were familiar until Aji's presentation with ACTS? No one? Wow. So we have an awareness problem, then we also have an implementation problem. But I think that, again, that's something we, and those that are in charge should consider. Aldo, did you have a...
Yeah, I have a reflection and 2 points. The first reflection, when I was seeing the jigsaw puzzle and the pieces adding one after the other, I was thinking that, Raymond, you must have either yoga every day, or can you remain so zen, knowing that you have this kind of disruption. And incidentally, it just happens that 2 countries started having a conflict at the border, and then even that is further disrupted by other events. Just to give an example, extra region, not to point fingers, in June, when Israel was bombing the nuclear bases, nuclear plants in Iran, since an American military Air Force basis was 4 kilometers away from the airport of Dubai. The airport of Dubai closed for 24 hours. And you can imagine what happened there in terms of international transport. So this is just a reflection that one sees that and one sees, why do you continue if you have all these difficulties? The second one is the fact that what you were saying, Paolo, regulation is there, but either is not known or is not applied. So before elevating the issue to the authorities, because the authorities can always say, oh, but there is a regulation. It's a matter of seeing what are the bottlenecks, not physically, but what creates the bottlenecks. Recently, in a big country, a certain president has launched the Department of Governmental Efficiency. I don't think that that is the solution.
No.
But there are issues that have to be taken into consideration because there are some, let's say it, some are here, but there are some bureaucrats that are so used to do things a certain way that when there is an agreement among the politicians that the regulation has to be implemented, they might resist in implementing these decisions. So maybe there is an issue that can be worked upon. What can break a certain logic of doing things that makes that, even if there is a regulation, is not applied, and the other hand, how to make sure that the kind of regulation that exists are applied. So there is also there a matter of information. I'm not saying that you have to use TikTok, but maybe there are modern methods that permits to assist that. And the last reflection is that, as a matter of fact, amazingly, DHL and Amazon deliver on time, despite all these difficulties. So there again, there is something that might be further analyzed in order to propose solutions which are those that permit to deliver on time all these issues.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aldo. Perhaps one point following up on what you were just hinting at. I think if we look at ASEAN, certainly EU does have that, but ASEAN itself has the regulatory impact assessments you were alluding to, ex ante and ex post. I'm not aware of them being systematically triggered. Certainly ex ante, they rarely happen, and ex post, I would think that now we are looking at something that deserves an ex post regulatory assessment. Is ACTS working properly or not? And what should or must we do to make it work? After having invested a lot of money, millions of euros, the efforts of people like Agi and Director Lan and all that are working for it, the co-investment of ASEAN member states, the customs authorities have invested in equipment to use that software to train their people. So it's not like this is something that just happened out of a technical assistance project. This is something that a lot of stakeholders have put a lot of efforts in. Should ASEAN, should the EU with ASEAN look at how it has been performing and perhaps try to address a few things here and there? Maybe by doing that, all of a sudden it becomes an even better no-brainer, and many more customers, many more businesses will embrace it, and then it becomes a success story. I think that that's what some of the suggestions we should make, that there be these moments of really reviewing what is happening, and I think there the leaders do have a role. Because I think, Aldo, as you were saying, that the bureaucrats of the world have a tendency to do things mechanically, right? And not second-guessing their work because they're used to it, they're proud of how they do things sometimes. But perhaps a leader which is higher up can see that there is another way and a way to fix things and can play a role. So I think that's important for those channels of communication to go up. Ray, please.
So maybe to the earlier point, right? So the two things I noticed, right? So one ASEAN country, and you probably know who it is, has this thing called the Bureau of Red Tape. So we have escalated some of the regulatory challenges, but unfortunately, and this bureau is sufficiently senior, it's staffed with a secretary level. Unfortunately, even though we've escalated stuff to that, nothing has moved because these are interagency coordination issues. So, ideally, if you go back to the the Department of Government Efficiency point, right? Is having a separate red tape bureau sufficient to address some of these challenges? I think it depends on the power and the mandate that's given to this bureau, within ASEAN, right? So that's a challenge. The other challenge is, and this is what I've heard directly from an advisor to a minister in an ASEAN country, bureaucrats have a KPI to issue regulations. No matter, it doesn't matter what type, the quality of the regulations is the number of regulations. So if they have that KPI, they're going to issue it anyway, right? So that for me is, and this advisor actually told us that this needs to change because we don't know what the impact of these regulations are. Yes, they've met those KPIs, but what is that impact, right? I think there's some very fundamental systemic issues that somehow need to be addressed. And earlier we were talking about how much is ASEAN going to be empowered to have an independent body that really looks at some of these things from a technical level in order to address that and enforce that within the member countries, because there are a lot of ASEAN commitments themselves which I think are not met because of domestic regulations.
Yeah, and perhaps that's a role for the Geo-Economic Task Force, not to be a one-off, but to be some think tank that is there and is critically reviewing things and then whispering into the leaders' ears solutions or ways forward. I have a question very quickly because I don't see a lot of, there is a question, but just one quick question to Aji. How many of those operators are actually ASEAN champions, ASEAN companies? Because of course DHL is a big operator, but it may be seen as a foreign, to a degree, investor or company. But are there ASEAN-based companies that are using ACTS and that could be the champion? Because I think sometimes what is missing is a champion from the industry that pushes the boundaries, right? Pushes the governments. Do they exist in ASEAN?
Yes, I mean, for example, from one country, they did use the ACTS last year quite frequently, but it's because of there's no customers that want to use the ACTS at the moment, so it stopped. It's ASEAN companies in Thailand, but the most of the movements are actually from
big operators,
big operators,
big logistics. Okay. I mean, I mean, there are also ASEAN companies, right? DHL is an ASEAN company, it's operating from all ASEAN member states. But I think there is an issue, perhaps also of perception and optics. And then sometimes some of these tools may be seen as being what non-ASEAN operators are trying to push onto ASEAN. Any comments? And there was one at the table, and also Director Lan. Perhaps we go ladies first. I see that there was a hand up first, and then I'll come to you. Please.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Marisa. I just wanted to maybe take on some of the points that Aji and Paulo and what the panel has said in what can be done to advocate more people to actually use the ACTS, because indeed awareness is something that is lacking. It's something that really needs, we need a bit more help to use a system that's already very good. Now, I wonder whether we need to also think about going beyond AEC, because right now we're talking about what we can do within the ASEAN economic community. Do we need to also think about looking at what's going on in the ASEAN social-cultural side? Like, do we need to, can we then leverage on things like the ASEAN Think Tank Summit, that's one of them that's coming up towards the end of the year, that can discuss some of these things? Or should we also look at leveraging on institutions or organizations or networks like the ASEAN University Network to streamline or at least mainstream a little bit more of these tools that are available in tertiary education or even TVET education? Even though it's not this is definitely something on a technical basis, it is something that is, for customs, for regulations. But I think just to maybe address some of the awareness raising aspects of it, is this something that we should also be thinking about, going beyond AEC and seeing what else we can do in the other ASEAN pillars? Thanks.
Okay, food for thought. Anyone? I think, Lan, you wanted to make also a point? Yeah, please.
Thank you. I take this opportunity to first to learn from DHL and also to learn from the audience. But indeed, I have something to share. First of all, I really like the idea of co-creations in moving forward the initiative that actually serve the benefit of the private sector. We maybe we have been trapped in the idea that we create something with the belief that it helpful. But it turned out that once it is implemented, it not meet the power of our expectations. And I say that not because that I think but I do believe that we need that kind of conversations where the private sector tell us candidly, straightforward about the issue that they are dealing with, or whether the initiative like ACTS actually serve the benefit of our community or not, before we can make some argument saying that we don't do sufficiently. So, for example, I think the ACTS, like I watch it very carefully every day. I talk to RG, my expert, who actually monitor the system, and ask how many transactions that we got today. You know, every day I got with him, the number is very, very modest. Either zero or very few transactions. And all the transactions is actually undertaken by the big player, or the big ship. And now I realize that it is definitely true. No one uses if the system do not allow you the flexibility of getting the benefit or upload, I can say so. You cannot financially viable if your truck coming back empty. I may so. And how the operation of the business operation, it very much, associated to that kind of concept. And the ACTS turned out to be like a disruptive, I can say so, facility that introduced to our business community. But we don't really see a tangible benefit out of it. So that is really a thing that we need to co-create for the next cycle. I thank the Scope Chat, who actually is willing to continue the legacy that I mentioned earlier. We need to build the initiative based on the actual business operations, not based on our willingness or our mandate to do it, but we really need to build it from. And I also believe that technology is not an issue. Technology can help us, but technology cannot dictate how we do it. But technology can help us to realize how to monitor better in order for the truck for the truck under the custom control can be able to take the good across the supply chain. Now, I really think about that. Why don't we think about some sort of connecting the special economic zone? For example, every economic zone have the custom authority, but we never think about this carefully. We also know that each and every airport, they actually have the custom authority, but I don't know that I'm very sure that they have no issues, they have no concept about introducing the ACTS. So that is why this morning we talked about how to promote the multimodal using the ACTS concept, but we really need that kind of concept to be digested and to be brainstormed among business and officials so that we can. Now, I'm really talking about how to move ahead, how to bring that idea forward. First, we need a good modality, we need a good business model, And with sufficient evidence, with sufficient statistic, I may say it should be well-informed decision-making process. We have to associate ourselves with that. And from the perspective of ASEAN, we do have now newly or enhanced the business and public partnership. In the past, yes, maybe some recommendation was put forward, and then after the meeting, everything is done, it's over. We don't want to sustain that kind of bad example, but we do want to have a follow-up. And for your information, starting from this year, the economic ministers will endorse. It means that it's not at this place, a new enhanced private sector engagement where we actually can really manage the process properly. We follow up the recommendation with the ASEAN Secretariat support to do that. So yes, I just want to share with you from my own perspective, and I do expect that, I do look forward to the next cycle of the ACTS collaboration. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Lan and Ray. Did you have a comment?
So maybe just to add, right? I mean, if you look at the various modes of transport within ASEAN, you have air, you have sea, you have road as the main ones, right? Now, air, you are limited by the belly space capacity of flights, right? And the flight scheduling and the frequency of flights between the various airports. Sea, you are also limited by the size of the containers and the scheduling of your ships. But for road, that's the most flexible. You can leave at any time, you can go through any route, and you can go at any point to point. That intermediary between air, which is your premium but limited by space, and sea is what's missing, right? At the moment, I can tell you for DHL, we fly all shipments into our hub in Changi, Singapore, and we fly shipments to KL for to be declared and to be distributed and delivered in Malaysia. But there's not enough belly space on the planes to fill our flight to take all the shipments. So we actually truck those shipments up. But those don't qualify for ACTS, right? And so because of the limited belly hold capacity in Singapore KL flights, right? So if you imagine that is just for us, what about for everyone else when you're trying to build an ecosystem for efficient logistics within ASEAN? You have, in my view, you're not even talking about multimodal. Just on road, if you just make that much better, then you can think about the bells and whistles of all the other modes of transport.
Yeah, and I'll get to the next comment. Please, microphone to the table if you guys can. There's a question there as well. Yeah, and perhaps while we wait for the mics to get to the speakers, also a comment from my side that in my early days of working with ASEAN, I remember ASEAN using pilots very often to test the waters. I haven't seen a lot of that happening, and I think this is an instance where perhaps a pilot here and there to see whether there is that business case that Lan was referring to for ACTS, in this case, to be upgraded, to be tweaked, would be a good thing to do, because we should also not forget that there are some vested interests around the region in the business that push against something like ACTS, right? We always think of it only as a customs and trade issue. It's also a transport issue. And there are transport vested interests that do not want to have additional competition. So again, as Lan was saying, we need to understand the business context and then try to see whether here and there, but that's why I think it has to be the leaders. You cannot leave it down to the transport or the customs or the trade minister. The leaders should say, yes, we lose a little bit on the transport side, but we gain so much more because we become part of a supply chain. We become part of a transit route. We become a stronger in attracting investment. So that's got to be done at a higher level. It cannot be left to individual ministries. Yes, one question from that table, and then Liz, you had a... Oh yeah, sorry, allow just Aji to make another point, please.
Sorry about that. So before, I just want to respond to what Director Lar and also Mr. Raymond about the current limitations that the ICTS have. It's, one of the reasons is ICTS is fully catered for the full cargo load. So the trucks must remain sealed until the final destinations with no partial loading or unloading at each borders, which is a problem for multi-stop supply chains. Yeah. For example, express delivery, not only DHL, but maybe UPS as well. And studies and consultations with stakeholders can explore how to adjust the rules and to allow controlled partial unloading without compromising the security, which already under study with the assistance with the scope trade as well. So we'll see what's the result on that. And back then again, to my professional information about the differing implementation in member states, not all member states open their, we could say, the inland customs offices. Mm. Yeah, I mean, for some they open, but most of the big ones, no, they don't open. Only customs offices at each border crossings that already agreed, but not in the, like, for example, in the capital, where the big ports are, or even where are the, basically, on, that's different implementation.
Yeah. Though I would imagine that that's also where most of the traffic happens. I mean, the small little border crossing point is probably not the real issue. Can we go to that table? Yeah, please.
Hi.
And if you could also introduce yourself again.
Good afternoon. My name is Helmi from Malaysia. Yeah. So thank you to Paulo, Raymond, and Aji. My question goes to Raymond. Just now you mentioned in your beautiful square puzzle just now, I noticed that the issues listed are mostly related to custom procedures. So my question is whether these issues only faced by DHL in the ASEAN region, or you also face this kind of situation in other regions also. The reason I ask this question is whether to, for us to understand whether this is something is related to ASEAN issues due to our mentality and professionalism, level of information, etc., or it is something related to the reservation of custom authority itself. Because if it is the latter, then I think the agenda to transform these custom authorities must become at the higher level, which is World Customs Organization, etc. I think that's all. Thank you.
So, so these are all ASEAN-specific examples. Now, whether these exist in other countries, I would say if you are from a less developed to developing country, yes, there are progressions in how customs have transformed themselves, right? But having said that, you know, we talk about WCO, etc. WCO is not a law enforcement body, right? It doesn't carry the weight. The instruments of WCO does not carry the weight of, for example, the WTO, although I doubt the WTO now. So, but having said that, I would say that what you see here are typically for ASEAN. There are international instruments like the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, there's the revised Kyoto Convention under the WCO that gives best practices for customs clearance. And I don't think enough of that is followed. I know some ASEAN countries have notified the WTO on their Trade Facilitation Agreement commitments, but have not followed through on the ground, right? So there's very, in my, there's some low-hanging fruit that can already be done. Yeah. But in terms of customs reform and modernization, that's a continuous discussion at the WCO, but the WCO is just a supportive body. They do not enforce, they do not do anything, right? It comes down to the country's own will and political will to actually reform the organization.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just 1 second, there's a question at that table and then we'll come to you, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, you already touched on it. You cannot have customs only discussion on ACT because, as you all have pointed out, it cuts across a lot of other issues. This morning I talked about your ASEAN driving license. It's a services issue. The issue which Raymond referred to is because some ASEAN member states practice cabotage, which don't allow pick up and drop off within their country. The other thing is AFAJIT, if this is building on AFAJIT Protocol 7, that was done in 1996. It's very, very old. So you need to also review how you did the Protocol 7. Can you have deviations from it? We talked about SEZ to SEZ links, because that's where the goods really need to be picked up and dropped off. And going back to our morning discussion, if we're talking about ASEAN integration, so it should allow drop off and pick off within ASEAN and not just seen as going to a port to go for an external non-ASEAN member state. So I agree. I'm not sure whether SIOM or there's a high-level task force within ASEAN that can be the first step to look at this, because it's an AFAS, ATIGA. We have temporary admission of goods provisions already in the revised ATIGA. We have some of the NTMs in the revised ATIGA already, your import licensing and stuff like that. So all of these need to fall into place if you really want to do a very smooth ACTS and encourage more local operators to use ACTS. The other question I had is, I'm not sure whether there are any lessons we can learn from the ATA CANE, which is for temporary admission, but is there any similarities that maybe we could have a workshop? I think the EU is very good at the ATA CANE. So going back to your point, how to do better EU-ASEAN capacity building relationships and learning curves from that as well. Thank you.
Okay, I thought it was a very quick last point, and then we bring this session to a close, as I'm told to do.
Just a quick comment on the cross-border trucks, this particular thing. I did some work last year in East Africa. The East African community is the equivalent of ASEAN. They have basically, most of their freight comes in through a single port, which is Mombasa, and that goes to about 6 different countries. They have several different problems there. One is relatively few roads. The other one is hijacking of trucks as well. So basically they have a centralized monitoring system which tags each truck, each container, which is also sealed, then goes across the various countries and across the borders seamlessly. It actually works. If anybody's interested, they can come and have a look, and I'll show you the pictures of it, of how it actually works. So it tracks each truck in real time, and as it crosses the borders, then the declarations are made with the relative customs authorities. That's actually working today. So just a comment.
All right, thank you very much. So I would bring this to a close, thanking, of course, Aji and Ray for their views and the experience they brought to the roundtable. Also, those of you that intervened, thank you very much. We will now go into the last roundtable, which is really intended to solicit views, have a discussion, start zooming in on some of those recommendations, right? But Mina, on to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our panelists and to Paolo once again. And now we go for coffee break. Come back in 15 minutes. Before that, I'd like to remind that we still need to collect some of the boarding passes and sworn declarations. So please pass them to Tema, who is there at the back of the room. Because otherwise we have some admin problems. Thank you. Let's come back in 15 minutes.